Welcome to this Enprise demonstration snippet, where we'll be looking at various different ways in which a contract can be created with an Enprise job. This demonstration snippet is not going to focus on any of the actual processing of a contract, which will be covered off in later snippets. The first contract creation process that will be addressed is the manual creation of a contract that is carried out from the master job. The process starts on the master job screen. Along the footer of the job screen, there is a button, Contract, which is used to access the contract details. When a user clicks on the Contracts button, if no contract exists for the job, the Contract Master screen will open in Add mode. While if a contract does exist, the form will be opened with the related contract details. Please note that only one contract can be created against a job. In this situation, no contract existed against my master job, and as such the form has opened in Add mode, and I can go ahead and start entering information related to the contract. We'll start by looking at the various fields on the header of the form. The contract code field is pre-populated by the system. However, the user can alter the system default code if they choose. The field is intended to display a company-related reference code for the contract. It is mandatory to have this field populated, and it is also worth being aware that this value can be altered at any stage during the course of the contract. It does not get locked down after the processing begins. The title field is also mandatory, and in conjunction with the description field are available, as their names imply, to provide some additional information about the contract. The title field is limited to 100 characters, while the description field is limited to 300 characters. The start and end dates are reference dates for the contract, with the start date being a required mandatory field. The last mandatory field on the form is the Entered By field, identifying the person responsible for the contract. The option to consolidate phases to one invoice plays an important part in situations where multiple contract phases are being invoiced out at the same time. With this option ticked, the system will include all the phase lines on the same invoice, while with the option not ticked, each phase line will result in a single invoice being generated. The Force Contract Invoicing Only prevents other job invoicing routines to be used on the contract. The Contract Complete checkbox and the related posting date are used in the contract completion processing to reconcile the deferred income account. As the name implies, the Exclude Processed Lines option removes the phase lines from the grid that have been fully invoiced. The Contract Details grid allows the user to enter the various billing phases or milestones that have been agreed in the contract. With each billing line, the user can define a reference phase associated to the line. These contract phases are set up in the Setup area of Enprise Job. The user can provide a description of the phase. They can enter dates related to the phase. These dates do not force any processing, but can be used to trigger alerts to identify phases that may be due for invoicing. The user can identify the value of the phase and any retention or variations that may be associated to the phase. These will be discussed further in the invoicing snippet. The second grid on the form relates to any retentions that may have been created associated to this contract. Once again, retentions will be discussed further in the contract invoicing demonstration snippet. On the footer of the form, there is a summary area displaying a number of job and contract summary titles, along with the various processing buttons that will be discussed in later sessions. Please also note that user-defined fields can be added to the contract. The system allows extra fields to be added to both the header and contract phase lines. For more information about the creation of extra fields, please refer to the relevant Enprise e-learning session on the topic. Once we have added the contract and closed the main contract screen, the header of the master job is now refreshed to indicate the fact that there is now a contract assigned to the job. In the second contract creation option, we will look at the Copy Job function that allows a job with a contract to be copied, replicating both the master job details and the contract details. The process here starts in the My Jobs form. In the previous section, we manually created a contract, which we'll now use as the basis for the copy process. In the My Job screen, I select the master job that needs to be copied. Please ensure that it is the master job related line and not the sub-job related line, as the copy options differ between the different job levels. Once the job has been selected, the copy process is carried out by clicking on the Copy button on the footer of the form. The resulting window provides a number of options on what to copy, with the last two directly related to copying the contract details linked to the source job. If I accept the options, the system will create a new job, and if I then refresh the list of jobs in the My Jobs form, we can see the new job with the new contract. Please note that although we have created the new job and contract based on the source job and contract, there exists no link between the new job and contract and the source job and contract. Both sets can be altered without having an impact on the other set. A drill through does exist directly on the My Jobs grid to access the contract associated to a job. The third option that is available for the creation of a contract is to create the contract using the Quota Contract function. This function is run from the quote tab of the master job and essentially uses the details of the job and quote to build up the details of the contract. This is specifically relevant to building the billing phase line information within the contract. We will start the process on the quote tab of the master job. On this particular job, I have entered a number of quote lines associated to various different quote line types, covering time, material, and resource quote details. On the Quote tab of the master job, there is a button, Quota Contract. As mentioned earlier, the intention of this process is to use the quote lines that have been entered to build the contract, specifically relating to the billing phase lines of that contract. When the user clicks the Quota Contract button, the system opens a window that provides a number of options that control how the contract is going to be created. The first section is to do with filtering out quote lines that are not required as part of the contract. The user has a number of different filter options, including sub-job and line details. When the process is run, any lines that meet the criteria of the filters will be excluded from the process. The second section in the processing screen is to determine how the system should create the actual phase lines in the contract. Fundamentally, the quote may contain a number of lines, but the billing contract does not necessarily reflect each quote line. Therefore, the option exists to group or consolidate the quote lines in a number of different ways. The first option is to simply generate one single contract phase line. In such a situation, the system will sum the sales total of all the lines that have not been excluded based on the filter criteria and add a single line to the contract phase. Alternatively, the user can choose up to 2 levels of consolidation and grouping based on analysis codes, item codes, line types, sub-job, or on a one-to-one basis, in which case each quote line will be copied through as a contract phase line. Once the user has chosen the grouping method they require, the system will go through and create the necessary phases based on the group option selected. Once these phase lines have been created, the user still has the option to alter the phase details if required. Before the contract can be added, the user will need to set the phase category on each created phase line. There is a setAll function to assist with setting the phase on the line in bulk. If the company intends to use the Quota Contract function, it pays to plan the job structure from the outset of the job to provide easy grouping structures to automate the creation of the contract phases. That concludes this demonstration snippet on the creation of contracts with an Enprise job. For further information, please visit our website www.enprise.com or email us on info@enprise.com.